All right, y'all. Thank you for coming to this coaching salon. I appreciate you all that have showed up here live, and hello to the folks that will be listening in later. And I thought January was a really good time to, oh, hey, Paul. I thought January was a really good time to talk about what's next. I know some people, resist the Gregorian calendar and the turning of the year because it really is an artificial construct. And for most of us, at least if you're in the northern hemisphere, it's kind of the dead of winter. And we were just saying, even just until about right now in January, it sort of feels a little like garbage time, like not really ready to get rolling yet. So I thought it would be a good time to talk about what's next. And for those of you that don't know me already, I'm Bridgette Boudreau, and I've been coaching and helping people figure out what's next for, 16 years now, 16 years this month. So, and as I was doing the outline for this course in the not too distant past, like an hour or so ago, I was thinking about, this all came from my own obsession with how to figure out these big life questions. But I only came to the understanding that this was my obsession in hindsight. I didn't know that that's what I was doing, as I was just kind of following the threads and trying to figure this out. How do I figure out what I want? How do I figure out what's next? I always felt this purpose alive inside of me, like I was meant to do something. And I kept waiting kind of for the burning bush to come and tell me what it was. And that never happened. And so I was like, okay, well, I need to kind of figure this out. So I wanted to just share a little bit today of what I've learned about these questions. I want to help you all get into starting to answer these questions. I want to work with as many of you as possible, and just to kind of dispel and hopefully keep you moving forward in your journey and help you move through some of the places where you inevitably get derailed in trying to answer this question. And mainly what I want you to know is these salons are always a conversation. So feel free to use the chat. You can raise your hand and let me know you have a question, and we'll have some interactive things we'll be doing together. But hopefully it's not just me talking to you the whole time. That's not my intention or the way I've designed it. And if you feel a connection to somebody or something they said, shoot them a direct message. You can do it in the chat and just introduce yourself and connect, because the other thing is like walking this path alone is zero fun. And sometimes in our everyday lives, people don't always understand or get this part of ourselves, or maybe we aren't ready to show that part of ourselves. And so use this as an opportunity to connect with people and just say hi. Okay, so right out of the gate, I'd love to hear from anybody who wants to chat in, either what you're hoping that we'll cover on today's call, what trips you up about what's next. If you guys just want to chat in, or even just unmute and chime in about either what you're expecting or what trips you up about what's next.
Okay, so my
Yeah.
big question I'm working on is if I'm going to move or not. I want to live in the mountains, but there's a lot to give up to move to a different place. And for about 2 years, I've been saying I'm going to make this decision within the next 6 months, and I haven't made it. So I thought I'd just see if you had any help here for getting off that decision, making it one way or the other.
All right. All right. Well, thank you for tossing that into the mix, Anne. All right. Lindsay says, what trips me up about asking what's next is, how much is exhaustion and temporary hardship versus clear communication that something's over? Yes, I'm so tempted to just dive into that right now, but you've really hit on, I think, one of the key things that really trips people up. So thank you for tossing that into the mix, and I'll definitely address that. Who else? Anybody else have anything that they want to toss in? Not required. Chris, go ahead.
Similar to what Lindsay's saying is that I've noticed when I'm reading any other coaches out there when they talk about going big and everything. I almost fall on the floor. I mean, really, it's like, yeah. And so what's next? And where I'm getting stuck is that I have a website ready to go, but I haven't launched it because I'm really afraid it won't help me at all. And I'm also really afraid it might. And I just like having a little handful of clients, and I'm not quite sure I have that sweet spot at the moment. But then I'm thinking, okay, these folks move on, I'd like to get to that sweet spot again. I don't know how to get to the sweet spot and keep it like, I only like 4 to 6 clients at a time. That's all I want.
Yeah. Oh, you said so much there, and it's like I paid you as a shill on this call, because that whole thing about going big and thinking big, that's actually one of the biggest pitfalls, and it's in my notes, so we'll definitely cover it. And I mean, who cares about big or not big? Like, it's just not even a relevant question. It's, what do you want to create? And then I mean, okay, I'm kind of getting into it before I get into it, but it's like allowing yourself the time and space to become, and knowing that you will be exactly as big as your thing, because your thing is you. So you don't even have to worry about, am I big enough? Am I showing up? Am I this or that or the other? Am I getting in my own way? I mean, okay, we get in our own way. That might be a little bit relevant, but it's like these questions that so many coaches talk about are not really great questions. And some of them, like, you don't even have to think about it all. It's really about trusting yourself and trusting your soul, and starting from where you are and what you want. Like, you don't have to aspire to anything more than what you want. And then when you put your website out there and you have those 6 or 7 clients, and then you might find yourself, when you get to that place, thinking, oh, I want to do something else, or I want to try this, or I want to try that. But you don't have to figure that out before you get there. So this is definitely like one of the critical themes that we'll be talking about.
Thank you. I don't have to figure it out before.
No, and you'll see, I'm going to hit it. So we'll come back to it. Thank you, Chris. Stephanie.
I think it kind of just goes back to it's being too precious about what it is that I'm, what it is that I want to do next, or that I think I want to do, and meaning like that I hold it so like tightly that I can't even launch that, and I've gotten so much better about that in other aspects of my life and work. But this this one, doing a podcast, it's not that I even care that a ton of people listen or anything, but it's just, for some reason, I'm stuck in this preciousness of it. So,
yeah. Well, and let's kind of normalize that it's something that we all do. That's the other thing, is like, because these things are precious to us and they do matter. And so it's almost like, the more that you can acknowledge that you're doing a really vulnerable new thing, or a big life change, or contemplating a big decision, and coming into compassion for yourself, and then having that awareness of like, okay, I don't have to be perfect about this, or precious, or I don't have to have it all figured out. Part of that is also like, we used to talk about this back when I was a new coach, but it's like being willing to suck at it, which to me is like being willing to experiment, being willing to try things out, and keep coming back to the idea that that's how you feel your way into it, rather than thinking your way to the destination. So we'll definitely hit on that more too. Thank you. Becky says, what to do when you simply have no idea what's next or what you want to do. Yes, absolutely. We're going to hit on that. So thank you all for tossing that into the mix. I'm going to keep going, because I have a ton of stuff to share with you today. And so what we're going to cover today is, I am going to cover some of these common pitfalls, and then share some kind of counterintuitive approaches that work better, and I think more importantly, feel better. And then we're going to do a little exercise together to kind of bring it to life. So be sure you have like a pen and a piece of paper or notes on your phone or something like that. Then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit, just to be totally transparent, I'm going to talk a little bit about my Mosaic course, my Mosaic Way course that opens today, and just give you a little intro to that. And I'll drop a link at the end. So that's what's happening. All right. So on to the pitfalls. And I just clustered the pitfalls along with what we can do instead. Okay. So one of the things right out of the gate that Chris was kind of hitting on is trying to make your thing a thing too soon. And Stephanie, you hit on it too. Trying to make your thing a thing too soon. Clients come to me all the time and they say some version of, man, I'm really interested in underwater basket weaving, but how do I make a living at that? I mean, I'm not even sure I like being underwater. I'll have to go to basket weaving graduate school. And who wants to buy baskets anyway? And what if I fail at baskets? And then what happens? What if I get the bends? You know what? I mean, it's like I see the kernel of the idea when they start talking and they're so excited, and it's like they're showing me their heart, it's really beautiful. And then the crabbing on it starts, it's like we just attach these weights to it, and it starts this thing that is so tender, and we start sinking it. And we've been taught to do this, right? It's like, well, how are you going to, right? When I went to college studying speech communication, what did people ask me? How are you going to make a living at that? And I'm like, I don't know. It's the classes that I like the best. Like, that's all I know right now. But our society kind of tells us that we have to have it all figured out. And so the very first thing to do is to suspend this urge to figure it all out. Same, and with making the question a binary. Should I do this or should I not do this? Right? Because then the question has so much weight out of the gate. So instead, what you want to do is stay open and curious. Think about yourself as gathering the pieces. So this is my mosaic parlance. For some of you have heard this before, but I use the metaphor of a mosaic. So instead of, should I be here or should I be there? Should I work in corporate or be an underwater basket weaver? Should I live where I am or should I live in this new place? Instead, be open and curious and start gathering the pieces. Well, what do I need to know? What do I want my quality of life to be like? Why does making this move sound compelling? Just start gathering the pieces. Why do I like? So somebody in the underwater basket weaving metaphor, they've already kind of put it all together. And what I would suggest to this person who came to me is to actually break it all apart. So it's like, what do I like about baskets? Why are baskets so compelling to me? Well, I love the ones that are hand woven, and then there's these patterns in them that I think are amazing, and that would be really fun. And then it's like, what do I like about being underwater? So you want to, just like if you were making a mosaic and you were taking sort of old crockery or plates or whatever, and you're breaking them apart, and then you're pulling out the pieces instead of trying to have it all figured out right away. Let's see. Also, letting go of the success failure mindset. So Chris, you kind of spoke to this, right? Oh, and Lindsay, you spoke to this. What if I fail? What if it doesn't work? What if it's not meant to be? So I did this for years in my coaching practice, and I'm not talking about my coaching practice 15 years ago. I'm talking about my coaching practice 18 months ago. So this one is, again, it's pervasive in our culture, and it's hard to let go. And when we're doing something that matters, it doesn't matter how much it's going to come up, and it's going to probably trick you and sneak up on you. And so you have to watch out for the success failure mindset. But I was living and dying by every launch, and of course my expectations were just up to here. Well, it's got to be, because that's how I do, because I'm a perfectionist. So my goals are always completely, outrageous, really. And so I was living and dying by every launch. And each one was a metric of how I was doing instead of looking at the whole story. Like so for me in my coaching business, I'm building a story of my coaching business, and everything I do is an opportunity to learn. It's an experiment. It's something I'm trying out. And when I do that, things started to change. And I decided, what I also believe is what's meant for you won't miss you, but it's probably not going to look anything like you think it does. So you have to start down this road and look at everything you do as an experiment rather than a success or failure point. And so that question, am I meant to do this? Am I not getting the message from the universe? That question kind of goes away, because it's like, well, I'm just on the path, and the path may evolve. And so it's my job to receive the feedback that I'm getting. And the thing is when you stay in success failure mindset, you don't get the feedback. There's just a binary. I succeeded or I failed. And most often it's failure, right? Because we kind of set ourselves up. It's pretty hard to succeed if you're anything like me. And then when you fail, then the question is, do I keep doing this? But when all that binary goes away, the questions are more like, what did I learn here? What do I need to know? What's the next step? And you keep going, and where you end up may look really different. It will look really different. And that's how you keep evolving. So the question, am I meant to do this? Yes. Do you know what it is yet? Probably not. Do you know exactly what it looks like? No. But there will be a time when you, like I said at the top of the call, there'll be a time in the future when you look back and you go, oh, that's what I've been trying to figure out the whole time. That's what I've been doing here. That's why I bounced around and did these things and picked up that thing and did that really random left turn, because I got that piece from that. And so that's, again, in the metaphor of the mosaic, it's not like the mosaic that you're going to create at the beginning. You're making it as you go along. And then at some point, the image becomes more clear and you're like, oh, this is what I'm making. This is me. So really important. Number one thing, don't try to make it a thing too soon. Stay curious, stay open. All right. Number two, related, we think we need to know what there looks like, right? So an example of this is, I posted about this on social media the other day because it was such a great example. I can just feel, I'm talking to a friend of mine and I know she's headed for a sea change in her coaching business. Right now, she has very kind of professionally focused practice. But what she's doing is studying, like, I would call it depth astrology, like a very esoteric form of astrology. And when she talks about it, so the other day we were chatting and she was chatting about her business, and it was pretty flat, like the conversation. Well, I don't know where it's going, and I'm tired of doing this and that. And then just, in the conversation, she started talking about her studies, and her whole affect changes. She lights up, she shines, and she's so good at talking about it, and it's natural. And so, I just served that back to her, and she said, maybe I'm headed that way. Cause I was like, well, what if, you did more of this depth astrology stuff? I mean, I'm not brilliant. Like, I'm just serving back what I'm seeing. And she was like, well, maybe, but I can't figure out how to get there from here. And I don't know what there looks like. So again, honestly, number two is really a more fleshing out of number one. Is you don't need to know what there looks like. Let go of what there looks like. Stephanie, you won't know what your podcast looks like a year, 2 years from now. And you've probably seen and heard podcasts and seen that evolution happen. And that only happens through doing the thing. So what we think and what we're taught by culture, again, none of this is our fault. Like, this is the way that we've all been taught, right? You sit patiently, you figure out the right answer, and then the teacher tells you that you made the right answer and you get a gold star. Well, that's not actually how life works. Like, we stand at the crossroads, we stand at the starting line, and we just begin. We don't necessarily know where we're going. We might have an idea, right? We have some ideas about where we're going. It has, and that's where you start becoming a mosaic maker. Well, it has this qualities and that qualities, and I know I want to have these kinds of experiences in my life, and I like these kinds of people. And you start to move toward it, trying things out. So when you're trying to figure out where you live, maybe it's like, how can I experiment my way there? How can I get more information that helps me cross that line? And it could be renting a house for a period of time, or even just spending time there, or talking to other people that live there, right? There's a lot that you can do to gather more information. And so a lot of times people will then tell themselves things like, oh, I'm a procrastinator, oh, I'm stuck, or whatever. But it's like, no, you just have to start moving toward. And that whole idea that you have to know what there looks like, you see, when I was talking to my friend, that just stops her right there, because she doesn't know how to get from her current iteration of her coaching practice to the next one. But the real question is, how could she start experimenting with that and moving and playing with it? And then ideas come. So that's that shift. And then just what I was saying, is we're not taught, our culture doesn't really teach us to figure out what's next. And a matter of fact, what most of the cultures that we belong to teach us is the total opposite of the skills that you need, right? Because our culture values certainty, conventional success, the idea that bigger is better, Chris. So, all of those things get hammered in and then reinforced. Sometimes we hire people that tell us that or give us these messages. And so a lot of my clients come to me and they think they're not playing big enough. They think that they're a procrastinator. They think they need to drive themselves harder. And these are actually the things that will derail you on this quest of something that's more soulful. And so what you need to do instead is forget about playing big or small. Just like I said at the top of the call, who cares? Who cares? And what does that even mean? How do we know if you're big or small? How do we measure that? Like, some of these things too are success or failure. It's like we keep them ephemeral, so they're never even clearly defined. And so then they become these targets that you can never hit, but you're constantly trying to hit them. And then you're stuck, right? You're kind of lost because you're trying to hit these things that they don't actually matter, and two, they don't actually exist. So, and then because of all the things I've been talking about, people will come to me and they'll say, well, I'm just a procrastinator. And the more I get into it, the more I don't believe in procrastination. I think we always have really good reasons for doing what we do. And so, people are procrastinating because they don't know how to navigate. They actually just don't know what to do next. And if you don't know how to ask these questions that keep you open and curious, and you're constantly evaluating what you're doing by if you're succeeding and you're failing, and you can see, yeah, Stephanie says procrastination equals soul time. You're really working on soul time. Like, I was laughing this morning, I did this outline and 2 hours before this call. But I do that because I know myself and I trust myself. And so what I did before, I've been thinking about this thing for weeks now. I've been posting on social media. I've been doing notes in my phone. Every time I take a shower, I have like 5,000 notes in my phone I have to do after, because I just have so many ideas. And so I know now that that's how I work. And so I'm working on it in my head. I'm putting raw notes into an outline. And then, yeah, 2 hours before the call, sit down, because that forces me to crystallize and put the information down. So it's also knowing how you work. Now, somebody else might be like, oh my God, I want to do it 2 weeks in advance and I want to practice 3 times. And it's like, in another context, I might do that too. So the whole thing is, how do you roll? And again, if you're just calling yourself a procrastinator, that just shuts everything down. You've just called yourself a name and told yourself basically that you're broken. And then that's it. There's really nowhere to go from there. And so, a lot of people out there talk about self-compassion. And what I want to say is that self-compassion is the fuel that keeps you going. It's not just nice. It's not just a nice idea. It's vital, because if you're going to start hammering on yourself, nothing shuts down what's next, like just hammering on yourself for what you're not doing and how you're not good enough and how you need to drive yourself harder and all these things that you say to yourself. It's like finding your way through that and finding a more compassionate way to think about what you're doing and to talk to yourself is critical. And so if you are procrastinating, you're not doing what you want to be doing, get curious instead, right? Just be curious. Well, what's going on here? Do I have a different rhythm of working? Do I need to break the question that I'm asking myself down into smaller steps? Do I need to just try some things out? Do I need to walk away from this whole question altogether and go get out in nature and just know that it's all going to be working in the background? These are all things to do instead of just trying to hammer your way forward and logic your way forward. Let's see, all right. Yeah, because if you're trying to do something that's more soulful, like your purpose cannot be hustled, So you have to step back and start to listen. And when you start to listen, you'll hear the voice of your soul, but also life starts talking to you and you start getting those synchronicities and those, oh my gosh, somebody just came out of the blue and answered the question that I was asking. It's like all of that comes to us when we sit back and listen a little bit. If we've already decided we're on a track, we eliminate all of that good information that's trying to come into us, because we've already decided. If you've already decided you're an underwater basket weaver, the artisanal non-underwater basket weavers is not going to come through to your awareness, right? And so it's about staying open, and that's where the synchronicities occur. And then kind of the most counterintuitive thing at all is like the last point of things that will trip you up is don't ask what's next. And what I mean by that is, don't ask the all caps or the title case, what's next? Ask the lowercase, what's next? It's like we've made all this like all caps on the billboard. What's next? What should I do? What do I want? Oh my gosh. What the companion to what's next is, what do I want? Like, that was the hardest question for me to answer. I remember I was at some seminar back in the day, early days for me, and the presenter gets up and very dramatically, it's probably like the one that Chris went to, and it's like, question number 1, how are you going to play big? All caps. Question number 2, what do you want? All caps. I remember sitting there going like, I don't know what I want. I don't know. And just feeling terrible about it. And I literally thought about it for years. Like, how do I answer this question? And it was when I made these little questions instead of big questions. What do I want right now? What's next, literally in this moment? And the weird part is when you start to answer these little questions. So what's the first thing I want to talk about in the podcast? What's the very next step to figuring out my move? How do I get these 5 to 7 clients that I love working with consistently, how do I get that rolling consistently? How do I just put myself out there right now in a way that feels good? What kind of support do I need to launch my website? You know, those are the questions that you can actually answer. And those answers build your momentum. And so again, it's that jumping forward and just hammering ourselves with these big questions. It doesn't take us where we want to go. So yeah, asking smaller, better questions. And then what I wanted to do here with this is just do a little exercise about asking smaller, better questions, just for a little fun, just for funsies, right? Okay. So, but before we get into that, does anybody have any questions or comments about, because I just unleashed a torrent there, or anything you want to add? Okay, I'm going to keep going. All right, so we're just going to do this little exercise about asking smaller, better questions. And here's the thing, when you do anything like this, be playful. The answer may not come right away, and just go with what you got. Like, I'm going to go around and work with each one of you. But sometimes it's also like we're trying to make the magic happen in a moment. And it's, I've heard more than once on these calls, like I'll do a little something like this because it's a little practical and it's a little magical. So we're going to do a little bit of both. And, sometimes people on the call are like, wah, wah, that wasn't that great for me. And then boom, they'll email me a week later and go, oh my God, this happened. So you also have to look at asking a question as like an intention, right? And that's like, we're shooting a flaming arrow into the dark. And, we don't know where it's going to land yet. And sometimes it takes a while for that to become apparent. So I just want a little caveat. All right. So based on everything that I've shared with you and what you're thinking about in terms of your particular what's next, what is a question that you have about your what's next? Might be your purpose, might be your business, might be a project that you're doing. And I want you to ask yourself one of these better questions, like it could be like, what do I need to know right now? What's the next step? Where do I look for more pieces? How should I approach this? What guidance do you have for me? And you can just ask the universe. So first, just write down whichever, either one of those questions or your own question that you have that you would like an answer to. Just, yeah, see Paul's done. Kind of checking. All right, do y'all have a question? Yeah. Okay, so just before we move on, just do a little check. Like, does this question that you wrote down, do you feel that do you feel an opening when you look at that question? Do you feel like, oh, there's possible answers? Or do you feel expansive or constrictive when you look at your question? That's like a quick check of, is everybody feeling like, oh, even if answers aren't coming, I feel possibilities with this question, because otherwise we'll jump in and do a little edit. Okay, Paul's expansive. I'm seeing, okay. All right, so next, we're just going to see what comes a little bit. Just let your gaze soften, kind of let any tension go out of your body. And just scan your eyes around the room that you're in. Just softly scan. And notice if your eyes land on any particular object in the room, and let your eyes land on an object in the room, in anything. Does everybody have their object? All right. I've got like this little Benihana. I don't know if you've ever been to Benihana, but they have like those little glasses that the kids can get. That this one's like a little laughing Buddha. So I'm like, that's where my eyes landed. All right. So you just let your gaze land anywhere. Now, write down next to your question what the object is. So I'm writing down my Benihana glass. All right. Now, what are 3 adjectives that describe this object? Any 3 adjectives? Just jot down your description. My Benihana glass, I don't even know what to call it, is white, chubby, and amusing. Okay, you got your 3 adjectives. Now, you're going to write down, you can sort of ask this question 2 ways. How is this object like my question? I'll write these down. How is this object like my question? And or, hold on. There we go. And or, how does this object give me more information about my question? There. All right. Who's got something? Or who doesn't have something? Or who would like to share? Stephanie, go ahead. What do you have?
Well, I don't think it's working for, I mean, I picked my dad's baseball, well, his hat from his ship. And I mean, I can't really find my question. And so I don't really know that I'm necessarily doing this right, which
Yeah.
be very much like,
No, that's cool. Yeah.
How can I find support getting my project started? Which I know about myself is that I need support. That's just the way my brain works. So I don't know if this is the question. So I just, my dad's hat popped out, but I couldn't really find a lot of ways to describe it, blue.
Okay.
Rimmed.
So
I
this
don't,
is where you can play around with it a little bit.
okay.
So the most literal interpretation would be to ask your dad or ask the powers that be
Right. I thought, okay.
for guidance. So that's one. So it's not necessarily gonna track back to your adjectives, but
Okay.
it's just kind of getting you started connecting with the object, and then you can think about like what does a hat do? So like when you think of a hat, what does a hat do?
Protects. Hide your hair when it's messy.
Okay.
Uh, keeps your head warm. Keeps you, I don't.
So maybe it's like, how do I, it may lead to just other questions or other needs you have. Like, how do I protect myself when the process feels messy?
Yeah.
Because maybe you need that kind of support, or it's just like, maybe you tell your friends like, hey, I really just need you to like cheer me on right now, or or I'm gonna do this and share it with a smaller audience, right? So it's just like it's all just about, it's like free association, right? It's like you're just looking at a Rorschach chart blot. I can't say that, but those ink blots, that they use in the psychology. And so it's like playing with it because it's in your mind, and somehow just trying, like our minds were meaning making machines. So this is about just like what associations can you make and what does that tell you? So that's one level. But then sometimes what happens too is there's just these other more ethereal levels that will click in, that more information will come later. And so this is just a way of like tossing it out into the field. Part of what I do in my course is we play with the field. So you kind of throw a question out there and then you just see what comes back. What else? Who else is, where would your dad wear the hat? Yeah. Yeah. Who else wants to go? Go ahead, Paul.
My question was, what's the next step? I kept it really short in front of me. And then the thing I looked at was, it's called the California Atlas. It's a book of maps, painted maps of the geographies of California. And yeah, in I think it was helpful to me in the giving me more information about the question, in the sense that I am drawn to geography, and I've been feeling in a rut in terms of workspace. My workspace, like, have like a rescue dog and my teens, and I've been working at home, and it feels somewhat expansive to be even just working in a space that resonates with me energetically, geographically. And I actually took some movement last night to ask about an office space that's a little bit out of town, that isn't a doorway to a place I do a lot of work, and it lights me up hiking there and things like that. And then, yeah, more broadly, I love I love California. I love the geography of California. I love the ecosystems of California. And a lot of my clients work in land conservation in California. And I've been really focused just on where I live now, mostly, and not kind of, something feels really nice about like traveling around and supporting clients in the work they're doing in the landscapes I love. So yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And I think it's really important so the one that seems like the least connected is probably the most important to follow right away, which is that thread of where you're working. And I think those are the places sometimes we don't see the connection, because maybe there's not a connection, right? But that's something you feel moved to do. And the connection is when you start following what you feel moved to do, your soul serves up more of that, because it says, oh, you're listening. And that's what keeps you moving forward. So follow it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you. Becky, you want to share?
I just had something interesting. It's annoying. It's like, this reminds me of like how when my mom used to tell me to count sheep, they would all explode or something. So it's like they'd jump in the air and they'd blow up, or they'd fall in a hole in the ground or something stupid. So why ask, real general, what's next? Because I asked the question originally, what you said, don't ask. Don't ask. What was I supposed to do, or what is it, or whatever. So I'm in the garage letting the dog out, and I thought, oh, this will be funny because what's it going to be? My car or something, but it was my sign that I made that got blown over by a snowplow the other day to do my horse business, where I do a horse nanny business. And like, I'm already doing that. And it feels not, I don't know. It feels obvious. Like that was one of the adjectives I wrote down was obvious, because it was like in the middle of my garage, there's this big ass sign, and like it's just propped up against something because it had gotten blown, knocked over or whatever. So out of my whole garage, it stood out like a sore thumb. And here I am, like every day saying, people are like, I'm getting business without trying, but like it's a one-off here and there. There's something about it that isn't juicy or something.
What
And
does
I
the
keep coming
sign
back to
say?
it. Oh, it says horse nanny. I think, no, I'm not in the garage anymore. Horse nanny, and it was my phone number. And
Oh,
that
okay.
at the end of my driveway, because I live in horse country, and so people drive by, and that's really the most advertisement I've ever done. And I've had like 30 calls in a month. Not all signed up, but I mean, I live in horse country, and I work at a horse barn, so I have good connections for that stuff.
So when that happens, it's not feeling juicy. Like, what
It
about
feels
it?
fun, but like doing it feels amazing. I have fun, but there's something like I want something more. I want something that uses my brain.
Okay.
And
So,
then I'm like, well, damn it, I was an engineer. I hated that.
all right. But see, so Becky and I, we've worked together. So, but notice how you go fast, right?
Yes.
So then it's like, ba, 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 ba. So what I think what you're looking for is something that's obvious, but that's blown down in the storm. So just wait with watchful awareness for something that will feel obvious once you hit it, but that maybe let's metaphorically blew down in the storm, right? So somewhere
What
in
do you
your
mean by
life.
like I'm trying? Yeah. Say
So
more about
like,
that.
but we don't know what it is. So you gotta wait. But like I think it's gonna feel obvious because it feels like you when you find it. And if you think about the metaphor of when something blows down in a storm, right? So maybe something in childhood that you loved that got suppressed along the way, or something you've forgotten, or something that you didn't focus on because you had to focus on other things. So to me, that's what I think of when I hear you say the sign blew down in the storm.
Oh,
Or it could just be the storm of your own thinking, right? So when you start
that's where I
thinking
went
really
first. Like I
fast,
shut it
yeah,
down.
yeah. So it's just like trusting, because what's crazy with you is like I shouldn't even say what's crazy with you, but
The
what
reason why
always
you're nuts.
happens with you is that
No, I
it
love
drops
it.
in the minute you just slow and take your attention off of it. So it's like you've set the intention, you've shot your flaming arrow now, and now your job is to take your attention off of it and just let it come. Let it come, because it's got to come. It's got to catch you unawares. It's got to
How
catch you when
many?
that storm of your mind is a little quieter.
Yeah. I feel like I need to get this message every day, all day before it will sink in for like 10 years or something.
Right. But the thing is like, this is how we are. So it's like, a better way to think about that is not like, oh, I just need to get this message once and for all. And, I'm so da da da. It's like knowing that, oh man, my mind just works fast and it wants to grab on. And that's how I do. And just in the same way that I do this outline 2 hours before the call, this is how you do, Becky. It's like you have a question and you think about it a ton and your mind gets really busy. And then you remember, oh, no, I gotta lay off of that and lay back. And then you do that and you bring like your good humor and your compassion, and then boom, it drops in. So just see what drops in. And
I'm very impatient.
yeah, but that's okay. Like, just, it's okay to be all those things and to be impatient. And then you remember and you remember and you remember, oh, this is me. This is how I do it. And now I've set this intention to know more, and I just got to let it go and it'll come. So,
All right. I just got to remind myself of that part.
yeah.
That would be helpful. Okay.
Thank
Thanks.
you. All right. We have time for one more quickie. Annette, do you want to go? Oh, it's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you too. I love the artwork behind you.
Oh, thank you.
I had the general question also, what is my next step?
Mhm.
And looking around the room, one of my cats caught my eye. was like, you're not really an object, but she caught my eye again. So I was like, I'll go with you. I'll go with you. The answer to the question, how is she like my question? She lives in the moment, and the question was asked in the moment, and we do our next step in the moment. And then I asked, how does she give me more information? She takes action and she takes joy in that action.
Yes.
When she wants to play, she plays and she goes all out. Same thing
Yeah.
with sleeping. So, yeah.
Yeah. And they're just working with what's right there. You know, if catnip shows up, amazing. If, you know, a little foil ball shows up, amazing. When food shows up, amazing. And yeah, so they're very in the moment. I like that a lot. And then you hit on another thing, because I think fundamentally, like, we're all looking to reconnect with the joy of living, you know, the joy of living. And all of these things that culture and society tells us about, we got to get there, and we got to be big, and we got to scale, and we got to monetize, and better figure out if you're a success or a failure, if the world is, you know, if the universe is trying to give you a message. And like, all of that is cutting us off from the joy of living, you know, and the joy of exploring, and then taking a nap in the sun, you know. So I think we can learn a lot from animals about presence.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah. And so I love that. And then also I know that you love animals specifically. So there may even just be more there for you about next steps that actually maybe are literally about cats. So there's always that possibility as
So
well.
still working with cats. And another thing that I get out of it is when I feel inspired, I may put it off because I feel I should be doing something else. But by the time I get the time, that inspiration has kind of dwindled and waned and hard to get back to.
That's another good point, is like, you've got to create space for this, and space without expectation of anything happening in that space. And that's another hard thing for us to do. So that's where the getting out in nature, or the, you know, I started knitting, or, you know, just like doing things that create a little bit of space for yourself. Because if we're just hustling from one thing to the next, like, again, there's no room for that new stuff to drop in. Okay, I want to start to move toward, thank you, Annette. I want to start to move toward the dismount. Stephanie was saying, I struggle with not having a deadline or people waiting for me to deliver. And that's where soul time becomes a challenge. Yeah. And I think, I guess what I've been really working with is staying with those places of tension with curiosity, you know. So that's what a lot of this is too, right? Is, so what happens is, again, it's like when we get to, and you know, anxious is one thing, but we get all those, I can't do this, or all those other thoughts that actually we've been talking about during this call. It's like those bounce us away from that point of tension. And so this has been my ongoing experiment, is, can I stay with that point of tension? Because my first thing will be, I don't know how to do that. I don't have any thought in my head about that. Like, the first thing wants us to jump away from the hot stove, right? And so instead, if you can just stay close, and then that's where the creativity and the curiosity comes in. Well, how can I deliver this on a schedule or on a deadline, instead of just bouncing away from yourself and thinking you can't do it? What would I need? How could that work? Is there, and then you have to find your own way, right? But that's where something might come to your attention, you know, life hacks for staying engaged, or whatever it is, something will come to you that will keep you in the game. And so I just want to do a quick segue. I wanted to drop you all the link because my Mosaic Way course is opening today. If you've done Mosaic stuff with me before, it's the Mosaic path, it's the Mosaic, whatever Mosaic that you've done. And the thing about it is, yes, I have curriculum that I teach, but it's all about this. It's all about how to stay open, how to stay in that exploration, what to do with the information you're getting, what to do when your shit comes up. Like that's a whole week that we work on. And it's all the answers to these big life questions that I've been asking. And the thing that I'm really excited about is I'm doing sort of a modified pay what you want pricing, but it's like I've set $100 minimum. The course is usually worth $290. And anywhere you want to be in there is great. So if you want to give yourself a discount because you've done it before, if you want to give yourself a discount because that's in your budget, if you want to give yourself a discount because you want to do it with friends, that's all available to you. If you want to pay the full price because you can swing it, I will receive that gratefully. Yes, and please join the course if you haven't done Mosaic work with me before. This is for if you're brand new to Mosaic work, you'll get the whole Mosaic model, you'll get started. And if you've done the Mosaic before, and people that have done it before find that it deepens every time, or you can zoom in on a particular place, or you can zoom out and get bigger, like it's never done. This is just a way of moving through life. And then you're in community with people like this who have cool observations and cool thoughts, and I have y'all buddy up. And you know, if you want to buddy up, you can buddy up. And if you don't want to buddy up and you're like, don't put me with anybody, you could be a total introvert too. But there's something about doing this work together in community that is so special. And it builds the muscle for all the stuff we've been talking about today, like how to keep yourself moving forward and not getting derailed. And once you start to build that muscle memory, you can do it yourself. The thing is that nothing here is like rocket science. It's all stuff that you can do intuitively. Once you kind of get the hang of it and the swing of it, and you're like, oh, I get what she's saying now, you just start moving forward. So if that sounds good, whether you are brand new to the Mosaic or you've done Mosaic stuff before, I would really love for you to join us. If you have friends that you would like to come along, I would love that too. And mainly, I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here today, to come together and to work with this question of what's next. I am truly interested in what comes up. So feel free to email me if anything comes up in the coming days and weeks related to this. And yeah, just know that I'm really grateful for you all and am wishing you well. And I'll be sharing the replay in the next day or so. So thank you again for joining. All right. Take good care.